From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's going on this week, Lou?
Matthew, how are you, partner? This episode is near and dear to my heart. We often speak of standard operating procedures. We talk about scaling. We talk about lending. We're always talking about the meat on the bone of business. But one thing we seldom delve into is the emotional IQ of the owner, the possible limiting beliefs of the entrepreneur. So we found from halfway across the globe, the illustrious Daniel Tolson to give us some insights on how those limiting beliefs can be unlimited and how our emotional IQ can be in the 200s to help scale our business. And as the old adage goes, have the entrepreneur working on the business and not in the business. So Daniel, we welcome you to the Liquid Lunch Project. Good to have you, my friend.
Gentlemen, great to be here. It's a pleasure. I'm really excited to share some of these insights with your audience.
Daniel, let's start right from the get-go. What is emotional IQ for an entrepreneur?
Well, if I think I said emotional intelligence to 100 small business owners, I think they'd look at me cross-eyed. When I was growing up in business, we never called this emotional intelligence. We called it being street smart. And I came from a pawnbroking business. We were money lenders. We were selling and buying second-hand goods. And there was no emotional intelligence. It was being street smart. So when you look at your customer, you should be able to read them and understand what they want without having to ask them. When you're leading your team, you should know your team so intimately that your left hand knows what your right hand's doing. So we always called it being street smart.
I could imagine somebody walking into your pawn shop and you profiling him in less than 3 seconds. This guy is selling the watch. He's looking to leverage. He's buying himself out of a debt. So I could see how you then segue into applying that skill set you learned to helping entrepreneurs. Give us some examples on the classic limiting beliefs of small business owners.
There's 4 big ones, and they're all rooted in fears. So I think the first one for any business, and I saw this growing up in small business, don't employ people. You're going to train them, they're going to leave you, and then they're going to start up in opposition against you. And so there was always this fear, what if we get taken advantage of? The second one was the fear of rejection. And I remember seeing my dad go through this. We had an employee who had been stealing money from the business. We knew he was stealing from the business, but my dad couldn't bring himself around to firing him because he might have to face rejection. He might have to face an argument. And I don't know if you've heard the term psychosomatic illness before, where your mind makes your body sick. Well, my dad couldn't get out of bed for an entire week to fire the bugger. The third one is losing stability. And here in Taiwan, we say we fear somebody taking away our rice bowl, taking away our money. So we bring people into our business. Now we start to fear, what if we lose our financial stability? I'm going to pay this person more money than I make. What if I lose? What if we go backwards? And then the fourth one is, what if we try and fail? What if we hire somebody and then they're the wrong person? Then what? Are we stuck with them? Are we going to lose our initial investment? What's going to happen? So those primal fears kick in, and instead of moving forward and taking action and scaling and growing your business and achieving your aims, your goals and objectives, you start to take step backwards. You start to freeze, and you become like a deer in the headlights. That's not a pretty sight in business when you're trying to scale. So it's those 4 fears, and then what you start to have is you have these chains and branches of limiting beliefs. And limiting beliefs, there can be hundreds of them. And you can go all the way back to the one that I used to hear all the time in family business. Daniel, money doesn't grow on trees. We're self-employed. It's okay for those people who are employed. It's okay for the government people. They get a pension. And it goes on and on and on. I think we've all heard these before.
So, Daniel, let me ask you one position on the following adage where you can give someone the recipes and you can give them all the ingredients. It doesn't make them an executive chef because at the end of the day, it's the execution. So, how can a small business owner scale and also teach that execution? Because no matter how good the quality of the produce you give me, I'm not going to be a star chef. I will have a good time with my wife, but how does an entrepreneur teach execution to others?
You got to start with the right expectations. The right expectations are so important. I was working with a gentleman in the United Kingdom. He built a business and it scaled up to about $100 million a year in sales. And he said to me, he said, Daniel, he said, when we build this business, we're going to build it on a 1%. And I said, what's that? And he said, you and I, we might be able to give it 100%, but not everybody else can give it 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to grow this business on the back of people's 1%. And if everybody just puts in 1% and we can get 1,000 people working for us, then that operates at 1,000%. But you and I can only ever operate at 100% at a time. But we can't find other people like us. We've got to find other people who can complement us. So we've got to have decent expectations. Now, when I'm helping my companies hire, the first thing we realize is that 30% of the people, 33% of the people who work for you will never succeed. So you've got to get out of your mind that everybody's going to work and they're going to work out for you. The other 33% of the people are going to be average performers. And those average performers, you can take them from good to great. We've heard that before by Jim Collins, good to great. And the truth is there's no bad soldiers under a good general. Now, there's going to be a third of people, the other 33%, who are really high performers, but they want more. And they're not going to stick around forever. You might have them for a season, but you might not have them for a lifetime. And you can't build your business off the back of those high performers because they're unpredictable. They're hard to look after. They will leave you for another 10%. But that group in the middle, if you can build your business off the back of those 1%ers, then you can grow. So it starts with your own expectations. If your expectations are unrealistic to start with, you'll set yourself up for failure. And you won't be convinced that you can grow. So I believe it's starting with the right expectations. And if you have the right expectations and then you hire effectively, then you can teach anything to anybody else as long as they've got the right attitude.
So if I'm hearing you right, like anything else, it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. You got to know your numbers. You got to expect that you're going to turn over at least 20% of your staff per year. That's the average. That's the average. You're going to lose 2 out of 10 people. Be okay with that. But a lot of people are looking for perfectionism. And perfectionism comes from wanting everything to be perfect. You've heard it before. Well, we're not going to scale this business unless we can do it 110% right the first time. There's no 110%. You can break Wall Street if you get your trading right 51% of the time. So you've got to have your expectations right. If our expectation is I've got to do this at 110%, you've already set yourself up for failure because you'll leave the gates and you'll say, oh my gosh, I'm going to try and fail. And then you'll go into self-sabotaging behavior to protect yourself.
Now, Daniel, just to use your analogy, from time to time, that general comes across a really good colonel or a good admiral. What are some of the tricks to nurturing that star to keep him in-house, in the shed, as opposed to having him going elsewhere? Give us some of the tricks to that game.
100%. We work with a very different group of people today. The old school is gone and the new school is coming in. To the old school, what we used to say is don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. The new generation says, don't ask me what I can do for the country. I'm going to ask the country, what are you going to do for me? And in business today, the youth, the new generation, are going to have up to 40 careers. Don't ask them what they're going to do for you. Tell them what you can do for them. They're going to use your business as a vehicle to achieve their personal and professional goals. And you have to have buy-in. You have to contribute to their business, to their career first. And that's what it's all about. We ask an employee to contribute to the business, and oftentimes we only give them a wage and nothing else. The new generation, they want you to have buy-in. They want this business to be a vehicle so they can achieve success. So straight out of the gates, we have to ask, what do you want? How can we contribute to your success? And then let us partner with you to get you there as well. That's how you do it.
So Daniel, you're saying that this gig economy and entrepreneurial bent is not an anomaly, it's here to stay.
It's here to stay. People want more than just a prison sentence. The deal is this. You're going to give me 2,000 hours of your life every year to build my business. That's what we ask. That's the average, 2,000 hours. The average American also travels 500 hours per year to work. So I'm actually asking you to grow my business and contribute for 2,500 hours every year. People say, well, what's in it for me? See, people are concerned about themselves. And the first thing everybody asks, what's in it for me? Yeah, so what about the salary? What else? I want more than that. And that's going to be more obvious in the years to come. And this is also what we call entrepreneurial thinking. Because a lot of people, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to own a business. You can be an entrepreneur and work within a business.
So with the labor shortages going on here in the US right now, right, it's very hard for small business owners, medium-sized business owners to actually find employees. So if I'm hearing you properly, you're saying if you find a good one, take an interest inside of that employee and see if he really likes the job he's doing. Because if they're consistent at what they do, but they have some creative ideas, to have an open mind and maybe place them in a different seat to keep them inside the organization?
There's three human motivations. We have biological motivation. That's the need just to have basic food, shelter, and water. So if an employee says, I'm motivated, never second guess them. It's just to what level of motivation they have. And there's people out there who are just motivated for the basics. So one of the rules in business for my clients, I say, don't hire the needy, hire the greedy. Hire the people who are ambitious and want more in their life. Because what will happen is they'll fight for what they want. So the first level of motivation is biological. The second level of motivation is extrinsic motivation. And we call this reward or punish. If you bring in $1 million worth of business, then we will give you 100,000 of that. However, there's so many things that depend on that $1 million coming in, and it might be out of your control. So if it's out of your control and you can't predict that $1 million coming in because the company's not willing to invest in marketing, they're not willing to refresh their products and services, it's out of your control. There is no motivation in that. The third level of motivation is intrinsic motivation. And this is when you do what's called the science of job matching. You look at people and you say, what is your special skill? And then you build a role that when they work within that role, it serves and they're able to use all of their special skills. It aligns with their motivators, their driving forces. And what happens is when they do that job, they're on fire internally. They're playing to their strengths. Your job as the leader is just to get the demotivators out of the environment and let them play their best game. And when you do that, they'll put their head down, and in about 10 years from now, they'll pop their head up for a breath of fresh air and they go, oh, that was awesome. Can we go again? Because now they're doing what they want every single day. If you don't put people in the right jobs, if you don't put them in the right seats, they will burn out and they'll never have that intrinsic motivation. That's the fire. It burns out and they say, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going.
So the job of a leader is to find out what actually motivates them out of the three that you said, right? Because it's not all about money for some people, right? Some people like stability and they're fine with lesser pay as long as they like what they're doing at the end of the day, right?
100%.
Sometimes it's good. It's a good, great job. And that gets to somebody, the compliment that they need to feel that intrinsic value, to feel like they're needed and they're part of a team overall. But I can definitely see your point with the top producing third that you're speaking about. Because when I owned my investment bank on Wall Street, we always wanted the top performers in there. But like you said, they're not loyal. You know, they will come in and they'll demand more and demand more. And if they get a better offer somewhere else, they're going to walk. Whereas you had that middle third that maybe they weren't doing $1 million a year in business, but they were bringing in $500,000. But that $500,000 was consistent. These high performers, you know, they had ups and downs, no swings, right? So it was actually more risky and we made less money dealing with them than cultivating that middle group.
Here's the great example. Exactly what you're talking about as driving forces. There's people who are driven by the dollar. So you've got to incentivize them by the dollar. That's what's important to them. But not everybody is incentivized by the dollar. There's people who are incentivized by knowledge. And if you say to them, as a part of this role, we're going to educate you, they'll go, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want. I want ongoing education. They'll be loyal. There's other people, and this is really interesting, is they get promoted to a leadership role, but they don't have a commanding driving force. A commanding driving force is somebody who wants to lead a team. They want to be in charge. They want to set the terms and conditions on the field. But if you put a collaborative person in that role, they'll burn out and they'll leave. And the same is true as if you put somebody with a commanding driving force into a team position and they can only calibrate and they can't take control, they'll burn out. What's the problem? Is it the employee or is it the leader? It has nothing to do with the employee. It has everything to do with the leader. And the latest statistics show that the employees, 50% of them are prepared to fire the leader before they leave the company. So the true definition of motivation is all motivation is self-motivation. A leader cannot motivate anybody. All a leader can do is remove the demotivators out of the environment so motivation is possible for the individual.
Okay, so now that we have removed all these demotivators, let's peel back the onion a little bit on the science of job matching, because it seems that that's going to be that critical crossroads. Help us develop that mindset of job matching from a scientific methodology.
First thing, we've got to know our numbers. Globally, recruiters have a 50-50 chance at hiring the right person, the toss of a coin. And the toss of a coin just doesn't work, because what happens is we get our motivators in there. See, what happens when you toss a coin? You flick it up and then you say to yourself, I hope to God it lands on heads. And that's the moment that your biases kick in. So the truth with emotional intelligence, and this is very important in hiring, is that 95% of people claim to be emotionally intelligent, yet only 10 to 15% are. So the first pillar of motivation, of emotional intelligence, is self-awareness. The second is self-regulation. The third is motivation. The fourth is social awareness. And the fifth is social regulation. And this is really important, is if the leader doesn't know who they are, which is called self-empathy, it's almost impossible for them to calibrate and read somebody else's personality effectively. You've heard us say before, you can't give what you don't have. So the recruiters have to get rid of their biases, and that's where we trust in science. And the science today that we use with job matching can eliminate the risk of a bad hire by up to 93%. But the cost of a bad hire can cripple a small business. If you have one bad hire, you may never be able to scale your business, because a bad hire costs the company 5 times that person's annual salary. So imagine you're a small business. You want to scale and grow, but you screw up your next hire. You're going to pay them $100,000, and now that hiring mistakes impacts the business and costs it $500,000. Your scaling dreams might disappear for a couple of years. So what we're going to do is we're going to trust in science, and we have to benchmark the role. And by benchmarking the role, we have a look at what are the behaviors that are required to succeed in this role. What are the behaviors of superior performance? Secondly, you've got to have a look at what drives the person. If the person was going to do this role, what would intrinsically motivate this person? And there's 12 different drivers that you've got to look at. Thirdly, you've got to have a look at skill set. Now, most people don't measure soft skills, but you can measure soft skills today, and there's 25 soft skills that predict success. And if you find the exact person who's a match to the behaviors, the driving force, and the skill set, and you find a match using science, then you'll eliminate your risk of a bad hire by up to 93%.
Can you explain to the audience what soft skills are?
Yeah, resiliency. That's a soft skill. So imagine you're hiring a new salesperson and they have little to no resiliency, and you send them out on the road to prospect for new business and they get their first 50 rejections. What happens? They come back and they say, this is not the job for me. It's not that the job's a problem, it's their level of resiliency. And resiliency is a very important skill for all salespeople. I build real estate teams, and every person who fails in the field of real estate has low resiliency. They can't stick around long enough to get past all the objections to land a sale. That's one. We also have leadership. Leadership is also a soft skill that you can measure. It's also a relating skill. If you can't get along with other people, you can't lead teams. And if you hire somebody who has a very low score in leadership and you ask them to run your team, your business is going to collapse because they're not geared for it. Another one is flexibility. Flexibility is the most important skill for the 21st century because we live in times of rapid change. There's conflicts, there's change, there's crisis happening every single day. And if you can't adapt and adjust and respond to the moving market, you'll get left behind. So these are examples of some of the skills that people need for job success. We're not thinking about your technical skills here. We're looking at soft skills.
Dan, I'm going to share a little secret, and I guess if our future prospects listen to this, it's I think my tactic is ruined. But I've got this little trick I play when we hire someone new. I like to take them out to lunch, but I take them out to lunch because I want to see them at work, right? So I'll make reservations at a restaurant where we don't have reservations, but the young lady at the front desk knows I'm setting this person up just to see how they react. And I tell them whatever they're going to order for lunch, bring them the exact opposite, just to see how they react under pressure. Because you're right, at our level, once you look at a resume, everyone's gone to a fine school and everyone's got all this work experience. So you're hiring the 1% of the 1%. So we understand that. But it's those soft skills, those intrinsic soft skills that are so difficult to quantify, and you only know how someone's going to react to pressure once you put them in the pressure boiler.
100%. 100%. We use a formula called the SWAN formula. And first of all, we're looking for smart people. We want intelligent people. We want people who have updated their knowledge, their skill, and their soft skills. We want people who are hard workers. We also want people who are ambitious. And the final test that we're looking for in hiring are nice people. and when you take them out of the comfort zone, you'll see their true behavior. So we follow a rule of 3, and it's a little bit like what you're doing here. We will interview people once in the office because we'll see them in the office and how they respond in the office. We'll take them for a walk down the park and we'll see how they respond in that environment. And then you'll take them to a cafe and you can see their social skills and how they speak to the baristas, how they speak to the waitresses. And it's a great giveaway. And these things you can only pick up over time, but you've got to be able to witness it firsthand. Now, one thing that's interesting for our clients is once you start to use science in the hiring process, Luigi, you can actually start to predict people's behavior. You can predict how they're going to respond to problems and challenges. You can predict how they'll respond to people and contacts. You can predict how they'll respond to the pace and the consistency in the environment. And you can also predict how they're going to respond to policies and constraints. And so when you know what you're looking for, you can start to test it very effectively.
There are also methodologies that a principal can put in place to anticipate that. And I'll give you one example that Matthew and I do. We have this theory of the overcorrect. We're humans. We make mistakes. We don't reply to a phone call. We make a human error. And obviously, when we make a human error, the client pays the price. So we tell our team is always overcorrect. You have a misunderstanding with your wife, you don't send her a bouquet of flowers, you buy her an FTD franchise. Always overcorrect, because that gets the message across. I'm curious, Matt, because Daniel obviously is an intellect. He has a very high emotional IQ, and you must be introspective to be able to conduct this analysis on a day-to-day basis for your clientele. How did you get to this point?
Well, for me, I grew up with learning disabilities. And for me, learning was super, super hard. So I was that kid in school who got the D's, the E's, and the F's. I was told that I'd never succeed, I'd amount to nothing. But within me, I knew there was something special about me, but it wasn't getting rewarded at school. So I was diagnosed with what's called Linear Sequential Learning Disability. So for me to learn in a linear manner was extremely hard. So I spent 5 years in remedial therapy to try to correct this. But I had a twisted spine, the cranial plates here were pushing down on the hemispheres of the brain, it created visual impairments, I was tone deaf, I used to get bleeding noses, my lungs had collapsed. And so for me, learning was hard. I got Epstein-Barr virus, chronic fatigue, I'd get glandular fever, I got chickenpox when I was about 16, and then I was getting tonsillitis like 6 times a year. And so I left school. But I had a passion for learning. But the way that they were teaching me at school didn't suit my learning style. So after I left school, I started to pursue business, and I realized, hey, I'm good at this. But what I'm really good at is getting along with people and reading people. And so then in 2010, I was working with Emirates Airline, and I got a telephone call at 4 a.m. in the morning. And my manager said, Daniel, there's been an accident on the aircraft. And I thought it was a peer support call because I was in critical incident stress management. And they said, but it's not a duty call. It's your wife. She's been in an accident. And so in 2010, I knew that my course of life had changed in that one moment. And for the next 2.5 years, my wife was in intensive care. She had 3 major surgeries and she was in rehabilitation. She lost her job. But when she lost her job, I was co-leading a team of 17,500 cabin crew. And I had to make a choice. Do I stay and develop my career, or do I resign and make sure I'm there for the birth of my daughter? So I then resigned. And so once I resigned, I had to reinvent myself. So I took everything I'd learned from leadership, and then I went into business. And in the first year, I lost all of my money. At the end of that year, I was on Social Security. After that, my business grew, and then the market collapsed. And then I had to move back to Taiwan, and I took a job teaching English part-time. And I knew if I could teach English, which was my worst subject at school, but I had the right colour passport, I could then build my business. And I just dedicated myself to studying the field of emotional intelligence because it naturally works with the way that my mind works. And since then, I've delivered more than 6,500 case studies into the science of emotional intelligence. So yes, I'm intellect, I sit in here, I'm a geek, I study it, I love it, it turns me on, and it's my strength. So when I work with businesses, I say, don't ask me to scale the business, go speak to Matthew and Luigi. I can help you with emotional intelligence, but those systems and processes, don't ask me. So, I've learned to play to my strengths, and that's what I'm an advocate for with businesses. Get great people to the best of your ability, and then train them so they stay.
So Daniel, it's no surprise that a person that has had so many difficulties in life has developed such empathy for people that are in need of empathy. So I think it's one of the keys to your success. You're well accomplished. You've got a wonderful mastermind. Tell us a little bit about what's in store for us in Daniel Tolson's 2.0. What's up next?
Well, coming up is Unleashed Masterclass. And before I was an Australian champion athlete, I had 9 years of struggle. Now, I was struggling for 9 years because I had a lot of fear. When I grew up, as I mentioned before, I had a lot of learning disabilities and I had physical disabilities. My legs used to collapse when I walked, and it's taken me 41 years to get my hips corrected. So I always had a fear of that I was going to try and fail. I had a fear that I'd try something new and I'd crash. So for about 9 years, I just kept getting set back. And my brother said to me once, he said, Dan, he goes, your problem is you're scared. You got the skill, you got the knowledge, you know how to do it, but you keep freaking yourself out. Every time you're about to try something new, your head, your mindset, you lose your mindset and you freak out and you don't attempt what you say you're going to do. And he was right. He was absolutely right. So I had to learn how to solve these fears myself. And in the Unleashed Masterclass, I'm passing on that knowledge that I was able to acquire about dealing with fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs. And a quick example, there's one young woman came to me last year and she said, Daniel, COVID-19 has scared me. I'm afraid to try and fail. I'm afraid to leave the comfort zone and I can't make any sales. The boss is hounding me. So she learned how just to improve her emotional intelligence. And inside of COVID-19, she then went on, after some training, to increase her sales by 138 million Malaysian ringgits. It's about $35 million US increase in sales during COVID. No new selling skills, no new products. She just learned to regulate those fears, those doubts, and those limiting beliefs. So that's 2.0 for me. It's just sharing what I've learned from sports and from my life experiences with other people so they can start to accelerate and multiply their results.
Hey, Daniel, where can everybody find this masterclass, and where can they get in touch with you on social media? Because I have a feeling a lot of our audience members are going to have some questions for you, and they're going to want to take a look at this masterclass.
Come over to unleashedmasterclass.com. That's the best place, unleashedmasterclass.com. And when you go there, you'll find my socials as well.
All right, amazing. So, Daniel, we really appreciate your time here. We want to be respectful of it. Can you answer a question that we ask everybody on the show? So
let's do it. I'll say yes, and then I'll answer it.
You sure you want to say yes first? So what does success look like to Mr. Daniel Tolson?
Success for me is living life on my terms. I'm Taiwanese. I look Australian, I sound Australian, but my heart is in Taiwan. And for me, I wake up, my children wake me up in the morning, and I play with them in the morning. I walk my daughter to school with my dream dog, which is a French bulldog. I come home, I get to work with my dream clients, and I live in this beautiful bubble of success because all the people I work with, they want to live life on their terms. They want to leave their teams to a victory, and they also want to leave a legacy. So I get to deal with people like that every single day, and that's success for me. I'm living my dream. I'm in the middle of it. I've got to pinch myself. It's 11:40 p.m. here at night, but this is part of living the dream, sharing the message. So that's what success is for me.
Daniel, thank you for being here. We're going to let you get some sleep now. And guys, that's a wrap of another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.
Thank you for listening to the show, and make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.